The point of this video are to talk about some concepts and ideals I think every team should think about or try to adopt in order to be successful and what kind of process they should go through to progress. My goal is to provide ideals that can work for any team, Challenger League or below. The key thing to remember though is that this is a process. There is no shortcut to get into Challenger League or Pro League. It's going to take work and it's going to take a team. No one is getting there without a team. The process is a journey, so try to enjoy it. But the thing to remember is that you can't rush through it and you can't skip steps in the process. Throughout my time playing comp and coaching or analyzing, the majority of teams I meet with don't seem to enjoy the process. It's not something I can understand, but it's their prerogative. When I was playing and involved in the game, I loved coming to practice and grinding with the team. Watching the team and everyone grow and learn was one of the funnest parts for me. When you go into game day and win after grinding all week, it's one of the best feelings. And that was accomplished as a team. If you don't enjoy those aspects, then why are you playing comp? Nothing is going to change as you climb through the ranks in terms of that mindset. If you go into Challenger League or Pro League, you're going to scrim, you're going to VOD review, and you're going to do game day. And you're going to rinse and repeat every day, every week. So it's just something to think about. The last thing to remember about the process is that things are going to go wrong. It's a very rare event that the plan is going to go perfect. This applies to practice, game day, and growth. There will always be forces out of your control, so try to control what you can and move on from the rest. Take your wins like rounds or maps or a good day of practice and build momentum off of those good things. But if you spend all your time complaining about things that go wrong, your team is going to fail. The next slide we have here is what is a team? At this point, or I've been a part of or met with at least 50 or more teams ranging from T2 to T4. Probably 90 to 95% of those players don't know what it is to be a team. They're selfish in their emotions and constantly take those emotions out on their team. Every one of those teams has failed. Every one of those teams has sat in T3 or T4 for the lifespan of the game, constantly disbanding, reforming with a couple new players, but never really making progress because none of them know what it is to be a team and work through issues. They're ruled by their emotions and don't focus on the goal as a whole of pushing into Challenger League or Pro League. This applies to some Challenger League players as well. Those 90 to 95% never consider that being a good teammate is going to help them get to their goal. This is a very complicated subject, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but at the end of the day, a player, regardless of how skilled they are, is not going to make it anywhere if they're not a good teammate and inspire good teammates, which is an important part. Every team has a goal, whether it's to get into SCS, Challenger League, or Pro League. Building a good team atmosphere is a habit that takes practice. The very successful teams in Challenger League or Pro League have spent time developing these habits and is one of the biggest gaps between them and everyone else. The focus should always be on making the team successful. To do this, you have to think bigger than yourself. Ultimately, the most selfish thing you can do is be selfless when it comes to your team. If you think bigger than yourself and put your team first and your teammates first, your team's going to be successful, regardless if it takes a little time or not. It's not going to happen overnight. An example of this is of the teams I've met with, there's always a weak link on the team. When I speak with those teams about helping develop that player, because a team is only as strong as their weakest player, the most common response I receive is, I don't, I shouldn't have to help them improve. They should want to do it on their own or something along those lines. I do agree with that statement to a degree. However, one of the things we just touched on is a team is only as strong as its weakest player. I've been involved in competitive Rainbow Six for about 2.5 years now. Of all the mid T3 teams and below I've met with who have said that to me over the span of that time, not one of them or their players have made it into even SCS at this time. If you hold any of those attributes and have real ambitions to climb in this game, you need to change. You're never going to make it if you don't. The other aspect of this as well is reputation. if you gain a bad reputation throughout your climb, you're going to close a lot of doors for yourself. Even in CL, I've heard people say, so and so is really good, but I would never team with them because of blank. We can look at several pro teams and learn from them and what kind of values they hold. For example, if we look at Liquid and their performance throughout this SI, with their two new players on their roster, their success throughout SI has been pretty impressive, especially with the thought that those players overall are pretty fresh. We can imagine what kind of program and team ethics they're promoting there. Investing in your team, whether it is to help develop your weakest link or building good energy to each scrim and lead, it's going to lead the team to success. Focusing on the goals of the team as a full squad will lead to success. Motivating one another for the daily grind will lead to success. I can keep going, but it's something that you and your team really need to spend time talking about and establishing. But the point is, creating a healthy team environment is going to lead to success. So next slide we have here is habits. Habits are created through daily effort. This is where discipline comes into play. You and your team might have goals, but to achieve those goals, you must have discipline, which is created through daily focus. You can't achieve set goals by being motivated this week and regressing back the next week. You'll never make progress or promote growth with a system like that, especially at this point in the game. I like to use the penny method. Each day and each week, we are actively focusing on our goals and improving. We should make small amounts of progress. Each penny is a penny in the bank, and eventually those pennies are going to add up over time. The key is to staying focused and disciplined in your training to achieve your goals, which leads us to a very overlooked subject, but the fundamentals. There is no specific order for these. As the fundamentals of the game and a team, they are critical to understand. I'm not going to go through every single point because they are pretty complicated and have micro categories within each. For some reason, it stopped there, but it's all good. But the fundamentals are something that really has come to my attention recently, especially in the T3 scene and below. Too many teams are trying to do too much and leap ahead to complicated subjects like in-depth strategies before they are established. The game is no different than any sport, playing an instrument, or being an artist. Everything is built from the ground up. By skipping the fundamentals, teams are adding strain to their team without even realizing it and slowing their learning potential because they're adding too many moving factors too fast. Many players come in treating this like they're a pro league team already. However, if you're in T3 and below, most most of the teams and players are weak when it comes to the basics. It's better to start with default strats and learn to play and communicate as a team at the foundational level rather than having a team spend all their time creating new unique strategies that they probably don't have the teamwork or game knowledge to utilize. Map knowledge is a huge portion here on this slide because T3 teams and below don't have the capacity to utilize in-depth strats. Most teams can't even make correct callouts or know all the callouts. Imagine if you spent the time initially that you're spending creating these unique strategies and use that time to clean up your comms and ensure that everyone knows all the rooms and specific callouts on each map, which would allow your team to be able to share that information accurately and quickly. That alone will set your team apart from the majority of T3 and T4 teams. Yet no one spends time on this subject because they just expect players to know. But in reality, there's no set of default callouts across the board for all teams. Some teams have different callouts and some players have different callouts. Plus, there are a lot of unique areas across the map like cafe and piano. Giving a call out that sledge is in piano is pretty vague, but saying something like sledge is in mini or on mini is more descriptive and allows someone who's trying to challenge or C4 from below know exactly where they are. This subject is not something that you can accomplish efficiently in one session in 10 minutes of running through the map saying this is this, and that's all the time you spend on it. It requires a repetitive practice and time. There's a lot of material in this game to memorize, even if you have been playing the game for 4 years or however long. I watched an episode of 6 on 6, and Antero asked Canadian what he would recommend for any new team picking up players or any new teams in general. And the first thing he said is spend time learning all the callouts for every room on every map. You can't just leap through the complicated layers of this game before you learn the fundamentals, especially when it comes to ranked versus competitive. Mental is another thing I always cover because every team I spend time with always suffers in some way. Again, you have to start with the fundamental level and move away from the ranked mindset of blaming and complaining about everything. In a real team atmosphere, this is going to do more harm than good. To many people, too many people are carrying that mentality from ranked into competitive and think it's okay. The last thing to talk about on this slide is leadership. Every team has one or two guys who might excel compared to the rest of the teams in terms of game knowledge, and they use that to talk down to their teammates. Yet they take charge like they're leaders. But the thing to remember is everyone in T3 and below are there for a reason. Even if you excel in game knowledge, it doesn't mean that you don't lack in other areas like communication or mentality. A good leader inspires teammates to be better. If you want to be a leader in this game, in a team environment, you're going to have to do more and do extra to help your team and players outside of IGLing in round. There are so many other aspects to being a leader other than IGLing in round. If you don't have a coach, you might have to spend some time with players one on one to help them catch up to speed or whatever the team needs. Being a good teammate in this game is one of the most crucial and fundamental parts of the game. The team can have potential, but even if you're in Pro League, for example, but if you don't know how to harness that potential and put away your emotions and not be selfish and full of ego, that potential doesn't mean anything. All right, so this is a pretty cool slide. Something I made up. Some people might find some categories that they would add or remove or change. But I just want to kind of give an overview of how team or players should kind of think of themselves, right? So as we can see, the T4 player might have a higher skill cap in terms of mechanics, right? They might be an entry player, but then we can see that they are very weak in motivation and mentality and awareness, right? So they're not fully rounded. So this player might be mechanically gifted for a T4 player, but they're lacking in many other categories. So there's a lot to work on, right? But then when we compare on the left to the T2 player, you can see that overall they're much more well-rounded. Um, Mechanics are obviously still high, but then we can see other things have grown like mentality, communication, awareness, positioning, all these things, right? So you have to grow all of these aspects to be a good player, especially if you want to move into Challenger League or Pro League. And we can imagine if we had a Pro League diagram here that um, they would be even more well-rounded than the T2 player, right? So next one we have here is time management. Um, when we think about how much time we spend in the game as a team, we could spend 15 to 25 hours a week as a team practicing, but all that time is wasted without focus, discipline, and direction, right? This slide is one of the most important parts of the process, regardless of what level you're at, and extremely undervalued in the mid T3 gap and below, in my experience. So, how do we use our time correctly? Well, one of the major factors is obviously discipline, which we've touched on, but another factor is a schedule. The many teams I have met with have one thing consistently on the schedule, and that's scrims. A team that is looking to grow and improve will need to understand that there's numerous other things to do. Here's an example, obviously, and so we can see that, you know, Monday is what I would call an admin day. I like to have those on Monday because it really sets the tone for the rest of the week. So you have a team meeting of the previous week, recap, plan, create some goals, run some dry runs or drills, do a VOD review, team building, whatever you see fit on that day. Obviously, you don't need to do it all, but you want to have a variety. So maybe this Monday we do this stuff, and then next Monday we do that stuff. But then you can see throughout the rest of the week, Tuesday through Friday, consistently warming up, consistently recapping, maybe running some drills, doing another VOD, and adapting your plan based on how, Tuesday and Wednesday have gone. You're scrimming your maps, and then afterwards you have your after action reviews, which could be 30 minutes, could be an hour. It depends on the team how much they want to talk. And then they have 2 days off. So this is a pretty heavy grinding team, I would say. But it's just an example of like what you should try to look at in terms of making a schedule for your team. So next one we have here is how to approach practice. One of the biggest issues with teams or players is how they approach practice. Practice is not something that you should have the attitude of same shit, different day, or just going through the motions, or this is just scrims and it doesn't matter. Teams with this mentality will fail or plateau hard and suffer from inconsistencies on game day. Every practice, every week should be with the mentality of improving in some way, whether it's individually or team wise. Again, we're trying to add pennies to our bank, and that's done through practice. The previous slide talked about time management, and practice is our time. The more disciplined we are with our time, the faster our team will grow. Almost all teams say that their intent is to push into Challenger League or Pro League. In the last slide, we talked about a schedule. Another important aspect of practice is goals. Each day, based on our after action review or recap, we need to focus on the new day, right? What did we do good yesterday as a team, and how do we carry that momentum into today? What did we do wrong yesterday, and what are some solutions to improve those aspects today? An example of this is a team that is weak mid round. Usually, teams are lacking vision of the end game plan and stagnate because they don't think at least one move ahead. If this is our team, then today our focus is number one, establishing an end round plan during the prep phase. Something like we need to plant, our goal is to plant trash on cafe and cocktail, right? Number two, the how. Once we gain control of piano and cigar, we need to be proactive in gaining intel and making adaptations accordingly. If you are unsure of what to do, then ask. If you're dead, check cams and let us know if you need a cam anywhere specific to help call during the execute. Number three, communication. Most teams lose complete control of their comms and end round vision mid and late round because they're not talking about obstacles and how to deal with them, and there's chaos. We need to be able to communicate and move forward during the chaos of mid round. Plans are good until the enemy starts shooting back. Number four, everyone has to be thinking of how to create space and push the round forward. You can't just depend on your IGL to make every decision. They can't see everything that's happening during the chaos of mid round and late round. Usually, they're going to give a plan of action and depend on you to make it happen, which means that players need to be able to think for themselves and execute to have a higher success rate. The next step is our mentality as a team. To me, once practice starts, it's a fresh start on your day. If you had a bad day prior to practice, that's unfortunate, but that's in the past at this point. If it's bad enough to where it's going to distract you and the team from practice, then you should just take the day off. Otherwise, it'll be a waste of a practice. Every practice should be with the intent of improving, learning, and enjoying the process as a team. A good example of this is if you were to push into Challenger League, Pro League, or SI right now. Let's say that your team is down 2-5 on map 2 after losing map 1? Are you just going to give up? In order to have comeback potential like SSG or other top teams, then a team needs to be able to reset round by round, map by map. In between maps, do a pros and cons recap of the last map. What did we do good and what did we do bad? What is our focus for the next map? This does not mean lose control of your emotions and tear into a player over tiny mistakes. That kind of attitude will not promote growth. Stay focused on the goals and practice what you can and take from the last map to the next map. Talking about every single tiny mistake from the last map won't reset teams' mental for the next map. That is something that you can do during reviews, for example. Which leads us to our last point for the slide, and that is there is a time and a place for everything. During scrims or game day, we need to have good energy and positivity because, again, we're practicing for game day, and it's crucial for game days like SI or Challenger League relegations. If you can't create the habit in a scrim when there's no stress or anything like that, how are you going to be able to do it in a game day scenario when anxiety, stress, and adrenaline are contributing factors? Unless it is directly affecting the next round or the next map, it can wait until your after action review or your VOD. This tip is so crucial. Challenger League teams still suffer on this point, and most likely quite a few Pro League teams as well. You have to train yourself daily the art of letting go in practice. It is a habit, which again is a daily effort to build. All right, and this is the last slide here. Not going to read through the quotes or anything. I just wanted to leave you with some valuable quotes if you have an interest, because I believe if we're trying to become successful at anything, we need to learn from successful people. They're successful for a reason and a valuable resource for mindset and work ethics. As competitive players in Rainbow Six, we need to be adaptive. Refusing to learn or change something that you're doing will not promote progress, right? Again, if you want to go to Pro League, for example, Pro League teams are constantly changing their training routine, player positions, and numerous other things like strategies, working towards fixing their weaknesses in all categories, right? So if we want to be great, then we must become great. Hope you enjoyed the video. Enjoy your day.